19 virtues that Benjamin Franklin necessarily virtues that other people would identify. In fact, today's lesson is on one that's most people would probably, well, I would consider it a virtue, but most people probably wouldn't, and that's the virtue of order. Now, we're not talking about giving orders or taking orders or ordering from a menu. We're talking about neatness, I guess would be a word. Things being in order. Franklin picks his third virtue as order, and he says because it would allow him more time for attending to his projects and studies. He understood that if he wanted to get important things done in his life, he had to make sure that the little things didn't get in the way. And this article that I was reading continues and says, the lives of Americans today are far busier and distraction-filled than Benjamin Franklin could ever have imagined. People strive to order their lives so that they can have peace and tranquility. An entire industry has sprung up around helping people to do just that. Books, planners. How many of you remember the Franklin Planner? Those are probably gone now, would be my guess. But I'm going to talk about that for a second here in a minute. Blogs, magazines, consultants who offer advice on how you can clean up your clutter. Yet despite the information out there, people still have trouble living up to this virtue. I remember a guy at Oak Ridge National Lab. He had a Franklin Planner that thick. I'm not going to be crude, but I am going to be a little base here. He couldn't go to the bathroom without consulting his Franklin Planner. This guy was so wrapped up in his Franklin Planner, he couldn't even go eat lunch until the Franklin Planner said it was time to eat lunch. I bet he spent 5 hours a day looking at the Franklin Planner. Bless his heart, as we say in the South. That's never a nice thing when you say bless his heart. That's what the ladies say when you're talking about young men. You know, he's nice, bless his heart, which means no, he's not. Okay, all right. So we have this thing about order. Think of synonyms or antonyms, things that either are the opposite of or the same thing as order. Think of some words and tell me. What are some other words that mean order or are the opposite of order? Confusion is the opposite. Okay. Disarray. Okay. Things that are not arrayed. They are unarrayed. So arrayed would be a synonym for they're in some kind of order. Disarrayed would be the opposite. Okay, what else? Chaos. Love the word. It's even a Greek word by itself. It comes to us from the Greek exactly as it is. Chaos. What else? Nothing else? Huh? Alphabet? All right. Why would you say alphabet?
Opposite of chaos.
Okay, it has an order to it, doesn't it? In fact, as a child, we have to learn the alphabet, and sometimes we get the letters out of order, and we get corrected when we do that, right? The neat, tidy. What else? Organized? Has someone said arranged already? We said arrayed, arranged. Sort, file, line up. What else? I got a bunch here. I'm wanting you to come up with some. Think. Categorize. Sequence. You know, they're in sequence, they're in order. We already said array. Plan. Do what? Ducks in a row. I had not thought of that one. That's a good one. Ducks in a row. See, that's why you need to speak up. Because, and you've come up with most of them so far. You're all into this, aren't you? What else? Ducks not in a row. Ducks scattered. Yeah, quacked up, yeah. Schedule. Structure, placement, that's kind of an odd one. Something with a direction, or a pattern to it, a system, a procedure, a method or methodology, classification, group, harmonize. That one took me a while to pick up on. Harmonize. Order is a kind of harmony, isn't it? Let's think of some more that are opposite. What have we already said? We said chaos, and what else did we say? Disorder, disarray, messy, tumult. What does tumult mean? Use it in a sentence. The ocean was in tumult. What does that mean? Hey, Elaine, we were just talking about you, sweetie. Yay, Elaine's here. Yay. See, Elaine, I'm going to embarrass you to death because I know you're leaving in a week or two, so I'm going to get on you big time. I hope you love living in Florida, sweetie. I used to live in Florida. I went to the University of Florida for 3.5 years. Met my wife there. Almost went to the University of Virginia instead. Anyway, messy, chaos, tumult, random is the opposite of order. Scattered, disorganized, confused, scrambled. Did I already say that? Mixed up, muddled. I said messy, but mess up, jumble, destroy, break, damage, and pandemonium. Okay, those are all opposite of order, aren't they? Which sounds better? Order or disorder? Order. It sounds better. There's a problem, though, with order. The universe operates according to laws. And one of those laws is called the second law of thermodynamics. And a technical statement of the second law of thermodynamics, and bear with me, this is really nasty. The total entropy of a closed or isolated system always increases over time. That's the second law of thermodynamics. Now let me tell you what that means in real words. Things fall apart unless an external force prevents it. In other words, your house falls to pieces unless you maintain it. How many people have you seen that don't maintain their car and it just over time just falls to pieces? Yet if you maintain it, you can keep a car for 25 years easily. Get 250, 300,000 miles out of it if you maintain it. And usually you could get even more out of it, but you just get tired of having that old car and you decide to go get a new one, just because you want one. That's okay. But things require maintenance. Things wear out. Things get messy automatically. There's kind of a crude saying, and I'm not opposed to saying things crude in this class. You've heard the phrase, going to hell in a handbasket. Basically, that is a statement of the second law of thermodynamics. Things tend to go downhill. That's also one of the major statements in plumbing. There are two rules in plumbing. Hot goes on the left and trash flows downhill. So there's that downhill again thing. Nothing just maintains or fixes itself by accident. You don't suddenly wake up one morning, get out of bed, run into the restroom, wash your face, and come back and your bed is miraculously made and the dishes are all miraculously washed. That does not happen. It takes effort to keep things up and to maintain them. Things decay, they age, they break down, they wear out. Everything requires constant maintenance and even cleaning to keep it from being literally destroyed. Think of some examples of things around the house that always seem to be needing maintenance or attention to maintain order. What do you got? Your garbage always has to be taken out, sometimes too frequently. What happens if you just refuse to take it out for a couple of days past the point where it needs to go? The what?
Your wife hollers at you.
Your wife hollers at you, plus the place starts smelling, it starts piling up around the garbage can, and it just keeps growing. It never takes itself out. My garage, I'm kind of a hoarder a little bit, not to the point of being pathological, well, almost pathological, but not. I don't have years' worth of newspapers piled up anywhere. I do have a couple of years' worth of my model train magazines piled up under a table, but every year or so I'll clear them out and throw them away, and it breaks my heart to throw away a stack of magazines that high that I'm never going to look at again, but I do it. This week I started and I don't know why, maybe it was because of this lesson, but this week I started cleaning up my garage. Now, I admit to being somewhat of a hoarder in the garage. I have stuff in my garage that I have had since I was 12 years old. Some of it I still actually use from time to time. The other day, a handle broke on Tyra's toilet in her bathroom. I had one of those in the garage, still in the blister pack. I was ready. So, in some senses of the word, that's an advantage. I also have a potty flapper in there and some O-rings and things for the washer, for the faucet. Huh? Oh, within 30 seconds. Within 30 seconds. In fact, my boss, when I went to work at Duke Power Company, I thought there was something wrong with the guy. He had maybe this much space on a very large desk. He had maybe this much space to work. He had stacks of paper this high just all over the desk. Very nice and neat and stacked up about a foot high and everything. Now, this guy's crazy. He needs a file cabinet. That was his file cabinet. You could say, Lionel, you remember that letter you wrote 6 months ago to Carolina Power and Light on doing so-and-so with them? Yeah, that is right. And he would reach into the middle of one of those piles and go and just pull it right out. He didn't look organized, but he was. And I'm kind of the same way. I tend to pile stuff up in organized ways. And so I kind of know where it is. But as I was cleaning up the garage this past week, I found stuff I didn't know I had that I was pleased to find. I found stuff I have had for years that I have never even cared anything about that I needed to throw away and had to force myself to do it. Huh? And I'll need it Monday. That's the rule. If you throw something away, you will need it within 3 weeks if you haven't even thought about it for 20 years. That's the rule. I do a lot of reloading ammunition. I probably have, I got a lot of different calibers. I got like 15 or 20 different calibers. But 9mm was the one I started out with. I probably have 15,000, 20,000 pieces of brass, that's the part that you make the bullet out of, in my garage in plastic bins. I threw out a couple of thousand of them just to give me a little bit more space. My heart was just being ripped out of my chest when I started throwing those things away. I can't use those, but they just, that's how it is. Okay, so order is important. Your dirty clothes basket is not your closet, okay? That is not your closet. And I've noticed, and I think, in fact, Curtis has talked about this a little bit, I've noticed that the world is becoming more chaotic. Modern contemporary composers don't sound anything like classical music. It sounds more like dissonance. That doesn't sound like music to me, but yet we hear a lot of that. A lot of the music that's popular on the radio, not all of it, some of it's quite good, but some of it's just chaotic. It makes no sense at all. Commercials. Pictures are flashing so fast, you can't even tell what you're looking at. And you're 90% through the commercial, and you go, what's this a commercial about? And they'll finally show something, you go, oh, okay, well, all right. I don't know how that related to it, but all right. People's thinking is chaotic. It's kind of a strange world we live in right now. Chaos seems to reign. Let's look at a few scriptures associated with order and disorder. And there aren't a large number of these. There's a huge number of he gave orders to or ordered them to do something, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about here today. And another one that shows up an awful lot in the NIV is in order to do so-and-so, which is just a trite English phrase for to do so-and-so. To can replace in order to.
Order was begun in creation.
Exactly.
Because God created order and set the world in motion.
when we look out in creation, they try to tell us that it's chaotic. And in some cases, parts of it do look kind of chaotic when a star explodes. But there is great order and majesty and beauty to the universe. They're still trying to figure out why galaxies hold together. They don't follow orbital celestial mechanics. Things are strange out there, but those spiral galaxies are gorgeous. And they still don't have they postulated dark energy and dark matter, and you can't detect it. In fact, those of you who are fairly old, you might remember the phrase ether. They used to think that space was filled with something called the ether, which was unmeasurable, completely elastic, and undetectable, because they couldn't figure out why electromagnetic waves traveled through space. It turns out it travels on itself. But anyway, we're kind of almost back to this unmeasurable stuff that fills the universe again, because they don't have a clue how the universe is ordered and hangs together. By the way, entropy, the thing that we just talked about, causes problems for the universe. We used to think at one time that the universe was slowing down as it went out. And then we said, no, it's not slowing down, it's just going at a constant rate. Now we found out it's speeding up. That has a very important meaning. What do you have to do to make something speed up? You can't just wish it would speed. Things don't automatically speed up. It takes energy. To get your car to go faster, you either have to press more on the gas pedal or go down a steep hill. One or the other, which is that potential energy from gravity and everything. Cars just sitting on level ground don't just speed up automatically. The universe is speeding up in its expansion. That means energy is coming from somewhere outside of the universe, unless we don't understand entropy. So the universe is a fascinating subject, but every time I look at it, I remember the verse that says, heavens what? Declare the glory of the Lord, and the firmament, the earth, shows his handiwork. It's just gorgeous. It's ordered. Flowers are not chaotic. They have an order, a reproducible order to them. Animals reproduce themselves. You don't have a cow and a horse producing a human being. You know, we don't get that. It has an order, a logic to it. Okay, so in 1 Corinthians, he's talking about the assembly. 1 Corinthians 14, and there are a couple of verses there, verse 33 and 40. He says, he's talking about doing things in an orderly way, and he says, for God is not a God of disorder, but of peace. Notice the opposition of disorder and peace. We don't usually think of that, do we? He's not a God of disorder, but of peace. So Paul is actually saying, in some sense of the word, the opposite of disorder is peace. Have you ever gotten the house really nicely cleaned up, or your car really nicely cleaned up, and you got to the end? What'd you feel? Tired, but I always feel happy and peaceful and tranquil when it's all done and clean and straightened up. So God is not the God of disorder, but of peace. And then in the 40th verse, he says, and the very famous one, but everything, speaking primarily of the assembly, everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. But I think that generally applies to everything. Why should you do anything in an unfitting and disorderly way? How is that going to accomplish anything? I don't know how you would accomplish anything by doing it in an unfitting and disorderly way. That's called an election. That's right. That's what it is. It's unfitting and disorderly. 2 Corinthians 12:20, he's warning them that he's coming to see them. Paul is going to see the Corinthians. He's very upset with them, and he says, I'm afraid that when I come, I may not find you as I want you to be, and you may not find me as you want me to be. In other words, I might be getting down on you. I fear that there may be discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, slander, gossip, arrogance, and disorder. He clumps disorder in with all these other horrible things. He obviously does not like disorder. 1 Thessalonians 5:14. We urge you, brothers and sisters, warn those. Now, the NIV says, Warn those who are idle and disruptive. The actual word there, which is correctly used in Young's literal translation, is we warn those who are disorderly. Encourage the disheartened, help the weak, be patient with everyone. 2 Thessalonians 3, 6, and 7. He says, in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, we command you, brothers and sisters, to keep away from every believer who is idle and disruptive. There's the disorderly word again that's translated idle and disruptive. And does not live according to the teaching you received from us. For you yourselves know how you ought to follow our example. We were not idle when we were with you. It continues in verse 10 and 12. It says, for even when we were with you, we gave you this rule. The one who is unwilling to work, not unable, unwilling to work shall not eat. That's pretty harsh. We hear that some of you are idle and disruptive. Again, the disorderly word that's translated idle and disruptive. They are not busy, they are busybodies. Such people we command and urge in the Lord Jesus Christ to settle down and earn the food they eat. You know, we used to disfellowship people who didn't come to church frequently. I would be much more inclined to disfellowship someone who didn't provide any value to the family and came every Sunday. I mean, if the person can, if they're unable to do anything other than occupy a seat, fine, that's their job, is to occupy a seat. But if you have resources and abilities and you withhold those from the family, but you are here every Sunday, and even most Wednesdays, and you're in a small group, and you do nothing to benefit the family, I would be inclined to not have anything to do with you. But if you do those things, and you were relatively lax in your attendance, I would probably encourage you, but I would not disfellowship you under any circumstances because you're a valuable member of the family. You're just a little weak in your attendance to the family. Okay, James, chapter 3. He's talking about wisdom. And he, up in, looks like verse 15, he says, such wisdom, he's talking about the wrong kind of wisdom and the good kind of wisdom. Such wisdom does not come down from heaven, but is earthly, unspiritual, demonic. For where you have envy and selfish ambition, there you find, here it is, disorder and every evil practice. So he's equating disorder with evil practices. But the wisdom that comes from heaven is first of all pure, then peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy and good fruit, impartial and sincere. Peacemakers who sow in peace reap a harvest of righteousness. So he's contrasting this disorder, which is evil, to an orderly kind of wisdom that produces all of these desirable things in a person. So order is of value. And I know that sometimes order is hard to achieve. It is for me, because I do have that hoarding gene just a little bit in my body, and I fight it. There are some other members of this congregation who fight it mightily and don't win, and I feel for them because it's a horrible thing to experience that kind of thing. But there are arguments against order. What are typical arguments against living in an orderly environment or a life or whatever? What's a good argument against order? There are some good ones. I don't have time. It's too much time. It takes too much time to be orderly. You what?
We get in a rut.
We get in a rut. It's too much work to lead an ordered life. It's too regimented to be orderly. Okay. Here's one I like. It makes me look like a neat freak. My mother could probably be classed as a neat freak. But you could achieve her standards. It wasn't like it was unachievable. you could achieve her standards of neatness, and we did. We were actually paid to do most of the housework. We three children, actually two of us, the other one came along kind of late, but we were paid to take care of the housework. And I learned to be a very, very neat housekeeper. Phil is a great housekeeper, by the way, if you didn't know that. If you could pay him enough, and you probably couldn't, he could clean your house like you wouldn't believe. But you're probably like me, Phil. There's not enough money on earth to get me to do somebody else's house like that, right? Anyway, there is a psychosis that can be damaging to your life. And that's sort of the definition of a psychosis. It's something that debilitates you in your life. I tell people I'm a little bit OCD. I'm not really OCD. I'm not obsessive compulsive. I just like to handle details. In fact, it's made me a very good living through my life. So in that sense, it's not a psychosis because it doesn't debilitate me. I don't have to stand flicking the lights on and off for 10 minutes to make sure they're off, or go check the locks on the doors 6 times. I do check them every night, once. So that's not debilitating. But you can have a debilitating case where you are so wrapped up in where things have to be. You know, everything has a place and it's in its place. And if it gets out of place, it's a major emergency and a sin and a crime, and you should be ashamed of yourself for letting that happen. Okay, that's debilitating. That's different. So being a neat freak is not the problem. It's being sick about it that's the problem. But what about this time thing? How come you don't have time but other people do to do it? Pretty much. How about the work level? I won't say who it is, but I know someone who lets their house get a foot deep in trash before they clean it up. Now, which is easier, to keep it cleaned up or to wait until it's a foot deep and clean it up? Which is more work? Well, if you wait until it's a foot deep, you've added work on top of just keeping it picked up, because now you have to wade through the mess to get it cleaned up. And that takes even longer. Time is longer when you do it that way. It's more work and more time to wait until it's nasty. Plus, it's not clean 98% of the time. It's nasty 98% of the time. You have to take some time. And I'm going to tell you how to handle that here in just a minute, if we get to it. Oh, we've still got about 10 minutes. Lovely. Let's just briefly talk about some of the situations where you must work. If you remember the second law of thermodynamics, you must work to maintain order in your mind. It's easy to let your mind just be disorganized and random, isn't it? If you don't discipline your mind and force yourself to think about the things that you should think about, and teach yourself to think about the things you should think about, you're just going to think about whatever flows by. And most of that stuff that's flowing by on TV is not worth thinking about, okay? I don't even know, I can't even pronounce it correctly. It's either Cardassians or Kardashians. One of them is an alien from Babylon 5, and the other one is a series of crazy women. I don't care what they do with their lives, because I don't have any impact on their lives and they don't have any impact on my life. I do not care about what goes on in that family's reality program. But
creation, God took from that.
yes.
He created the heavens and earth. He rested on the seventh day.
That's right, he did. He made it orderly. There's all kinds of stuff on TV. Football is cool. I enjoy football. Yesterday was great. That was such a great game. I was so disappointed at 4 seconds. And then I was elated 4 seconds later after UT won the game in the last 4 seconds of the game. That was great. Football does not need to be your life. It's great. It's fun. But don't let that control your whole life. There are way more important things in life. Discipline, order in your mind. Relationships. Don't let relationships just flow in and out of your life and randomly occur and randomly disappear. You got to work on those things to keep orderly relationships. Marriage is not when you quit working, it's when you start working on a relationship. It takes an unbelievable amount of work to maintain the order of a marriage relationship. It doesn't happen automatically by itself. Now, you may be so good at it till it feels effortless to you, but most people have to work at it. And friendships and things like that. Your relationship with God is not something that just happens automatically. You got to work. You got to spend time maintaining and keeping your relationship with God in order. Your work, or your actions, let's say. Work doesn't happen spontaneously. Well, work happens spontaneously. Effort to accomplish work doesn't happen spontaneously. There is an infinite amount of work to be done in the world. You don't have to generate work. There's plenty of it out there already. And if you've ever noticed, if you can't think of anything to do, the amount of work that you do have expands to fill the empty hours. If you don't have much to do, somehow it just expands. But we need to pay attention to have some discipline, some order to what we do at work, how we run our household. And one, I'm going to stop preaching now and start meddling. Money. You don't just spend what's in your back pocket randomly. You have bills to pay. You don't look in your back pocket to see if you can afford to buy a TV. Or like the commercial says, look at your credit balance. I have $3,000 left on my credit limit. I can buy a TV. No, that's not how you do that. You have to be disciplined. You have to be ordered. You have to think. You have to make some sense out of things. Don't let things just flow through your life in a chaotic and inorderly fashion. Okay, we may even end a few seconds early here. I'm going to tell you the secret to most order, not all order. We'll use as an example the mail when it comes. I would say 90% at least of all mail that I get is junk mail. The rule is when you pull it out of the box, on your way back into the house, or shortly after you get in the house, thumb through it, pull out the garbage mail, and throw it away now. Keep the bills, and if something is truly interesting to you, keep that. But throw the garbage away now. There are members here who collect their mail, and it just stacks up. And they have no idea what's in it. And it just keeps piling up. That's not accomplishing anything. Plus, you miss paying bills. By the way, used to it made sense to wait till the last few days to pay a bill. Why did it make sense to do that 10 years ago, 15 years ago? You had a checking account that was probably making 4 or 5% interest, right? So you were actually, it was to your advantage to wait. How much does your checking account earn now? 0.5. If it's like 0.05% per year, or almost, most people get nothing, on their checking accounts now. Virtually zero. There is no reason on earth to wait on paying a bill unless you don't have the money. In which case you need to pay more attention to what's going on. Pay the bills immediately. Get them off your desk or wherever you collect them. You're going to lose a bill every now and then if you let them sit there, or you're going to forget about the deadline. Get them off. In other words, do it now. If something comes up in the house, I won't tell who this is, but if you are using a package of something, you unpackage something, you put it on the thing and you stick it in the microwave, don't walk off, throw that empty package away. Just turn around and throw it in the garbage can. Now, right this minute, because there are people who will leave that package on the counter for 2 days, along with 5 other packages. And they go, what a mess. You made it. Pick it up. It doesn't take all that much effort. Now it looks clean and neat, when you do that. I won't tell you where that's done, but that happens. Do it now, if possible. If you can't handle it now, have a plan in mind and a date in mind by when you want to or must have it done. Don't just let it hang. Now, I have a long list of stuff. I have my to-do list for today because I'm forgetful, and I don't always accomplish everything on that list. And then I have stuff that's scheduled for certain dates, and then I have stuff that has no date on it. You know how often that stuff that has no date on it gets done? Almost never. Because that's my get around to it list, and how often do you get one of those round to it's? Not very often, right? So I'm bad to not put a date on things, and if I don't, it just never gets done. Discipline yourself to get things done as they need to be done. Don't delay. Don't put it off. And if you keep things in order and well arranged, what happens when you need it? You can find it. Bless her heart, I love my daughter to death. She's a wonderful, wonderful person. But when she would come home, when she was about 16 or 17, she was driving, maybe 17 because she didn't drive for about a year. She would come home, and when she walked through the door, the keys would just go over her shoulder. Literally. She would just throw them over her shoulder. And they'd hit the ground, they'd slide up under something. 20 minutes later, she says, "Daddy, I can't find my keys." I said, "Well, where did you put them?" "I don't know." I said, "I know where you put them. You threw them over your shoulder when you came in the door." "Well, I don't see them." And she'd go, "I don't see them." I said, "I know right where they are." "Well, I can't find them." I said, "Look for them." "I can't find them." So she's getting late to go somewhere. She can't find her keys. I said, "Tell you what, for $5, I'll tell you where they are." And I didn't touch them. I didn't hide them. Finally, she'd give up. She said, "Okay, $5. Hand me the $5. They're over there under the sewing table, right there where you threw them." It didn't take but about 3 or 4 times for her to learn not to do that. If you do that, if I can't find my billfold, if my billfold gets lost, it's in one of 2 places, or else it is truly lost. It's either in the pants I had on before I put these pants on, or it's in the place where I keep it all the time. If it's not in one of those 2 places, it's lost. It's gone. And I know. I don't have to search the house all over. You remember the story of the guy that's down on the ground, on the sidewalk, and he's searching all over the sidewalk, and people come by and, what are you looking for? "I lost a contact lens." And so they're all getting down and they're looking on the concrete and the sidewalk and everything, and they can't find it. And they said, "Well, where did you lose this thing?" "I lost it about 20 feet over there in the grass." "Well, why are we looking here?" "Well, it's so much easier to look over here than it is to look over there." Stupid. Let's pay attention. Let's pay attention. Yeah, you quit looking. Well, have you ever noticed that everything, when you find something, it's always in the last place you look? Okay, so do it now. Next week, we will be talking about resolution. He said, resolve to perform what you ought to perform and perform without fail what you resolve. In other words, be a person of your word. Do what you say you're going to do and say you're going to do good things. Okay, so that'll be the lesson for next week. Any comments? You guys usually just sit and listen no matter how hard I try to draw you out. Any comments on order today? Say something. Silence is order. May God grant you peace, tranquility, and order in your mind and in your everyday life. All right, so next week we'll do resolution.